Madness.
Went for a run.
Yeah.
You went for a run? You went for a run?
I'd still got to went for a run.
Yeah. No, I have to do it. It's like, it's become like one of my big things now for the last 4 or 5 months, where 3 or 4 times a week I have to go for a run. So, and it just so happened that yesterday was the day that I needed to go for a run. I was not feeling it at all, but I just, I was just like, I have to do this because, I just don't want to not do it. So
I feel terrible now.
I feel bad just saying. Well, you know what? I went today after not being for like a week, so now I was feeling good about myself, but probably not now after hearing that, Umar. Thanks.
I've seen these people that have been training during the lockdown at home.
Oh my goodness!
And then I've met up with people back in the gym, and they're like, "Oh yeah, what have you been up to? What have you been up to?" And I'm like, "Nothing." That's not me. I can't do that. I waited for the gyms to open, and I'm back.
I know. I'll be lifting like a can of beans, and I don't even like beans. That's been like my that's been my something. Right. Well, we are now live, as you know, because it will take a minute. Oh look, here we go. We've got some. Hopefully, I'm not. To be honest, because the heat has been crazy, I'm not sure how many people we may or may have. But don't worry. I would say, like, don't watch that. And I will keep an eye on the comments section. And, you know, if we get more people that just need a bit of a break from the heat, if they're not barbecuing, coming back from the beach, coming back, you know, all places we're not meant to be with the lockdown. You know what I mean? So we can we can catch it from there. We can catch them from there.
I did not go to the beach on Saturday.
You didn't? No, don't tell my partner that, because I've banned him. I'm like, now's not the time for me to be licked down with coronavirus. So you know what? We've got a paddling pool in the garden. Let's just be grateful. Yeah, that's it. We'll be grateful for that. Right. Hey, James. Warm and easy. Oh, look, we've got friends. Oh, here they come. We've got friends. I always have friends. Right. So we are going to be talking about, oh, God. So the stereotype, I guess, of the strong black man. But one of the reasons why I was really super keen to have this conversation is because I've been very much aware of, dare I say, like, black women almost dominating this space, because there's a lot of us, we're going on panels, we're doing events, we're writing, we're doing stuff. And maybe it's just me, and you guys can correct me if you think this is not the case, but I definitely felt like there was more of a spotlight and a perspective missing about black men. And by definition, I tell you, like, I was really struggling to get people that would talk to me, do you know what I mean, about this. So doubly, I'm very grateful to have you both here. But also just understanding about what that label of strength means, particularly in our community, and how we navigate, you know, kind of society generally, but particularly where we are now, and also thinking about our mental wealth and, you know, how we just, you know, how we can just heal from a lot of the stuff that's going on, and what does that need to look like as we go forward, and like, there's so much, there is so much. So we're going to try and do it justice. At least in an hour. But before, you know, we get into it, it'd be good if you could just give people a flavour of, like, how we even here, the three of us even having this conversation. What's your story and what's brought you here? Yeah, other than me begging you to come on, do you know what I mean? Umar, don't be like outing me. Umar's like, well, you know, Shreen, you messaged me, so I don't know what else you
dare I say, I wasn't going to say no. I mean, for me, I've been obviously a lot is happening in this space along a number of platforms. LinkedIn being one of them, and then that's where I've kind of caught up with yourself, Shireen, and followed, you know, your daily updates, and we had a chat about your tenacity and your commitment to keep that going, which was brilliant. That led us on to talk a bit about, as you just touched on, more black women in this space, and then, you know, we kind of ventured into the subject about, you know, black male representation and having that conversation. So from memory, that's how we got here. And for me, it's I'm a mental health advocate. I believe I believe there are two things in the kind of well-being at workspace from a kind of inclusive perspective and a mental health perspective that have that stigma, and that is talking about black issues and talking about mental health. I think people get nervous around those two subjects more than any other. So when we had the little chat and the opportunity to kind of have this conversation, I just jumped straight on it, and that's it. That's what I'm here to do, and just give a flavour, I suppose.
And I think from my perspective, yeah, Shireen, you did message me on LinkedIn.
I slid into your DMs. Umar was like, "Who is this woman?" I was like, "Hey."
yes, but no, it was all good. But no, obviously I'm part of Dope Black Dads. That's one of the platforms that I engage in, and we podcast every week, and we're all about kind of providing Black fathers the space to inspire, to educate, to heal, and to celebrate. My background is actually I'm a mental health solicitor and also a mental capacity solicitor as well. And my work is working with people who've been detained under the Mental Health Act, representing them at mental health tribunals. And also on the flip of that, I also do a lot of work around lasting powers of attorney and kind of challenges that are made around that to the court of protection. So for me, having this opportunity to speak on this platform is important because I think the Black male experience, especially when it comes to mental health, isn't necessarily talked about as much. And I think part of that is to do with, there's maybe not enough males that are wanting to open up and share of their experiences. And I think part of that is there's a lot of stigma around that. There is a perception that the Black man has to be strong and kind of carry the whole load, the whole world on his shoulders, and showing vulnerability is a sign of weakness. So I think it's great to have this platform to be able to speak and hopefully break down some of the stigmas that people have around that and actually open up and start to encourage more people to talk about things.
And so what do you like? Listen, I'm just gonna go into it now. What has been, like, you touched on that in terms of probably not, a lot of Black men probably not feeling as comfortable to talk about this, even though we are in this moment where there's a lot of us sharing our voices, our lived experience, talking about what life is like to be Black while navigating a society that probably up until this point has struggled to accept that, particularly in the UK, right, that we have a structural systemic racism issue. Why do you think, even though we're here now, that there is still that reluctance? Or is that just, or I'm just seeing that way and that's not really the case?
I don't think so. I think what's happened is, again, for so long, for so many years, and it's not just our generation. We're talking about parents' generation, grandparents' generation. It's never really been the done thing to talk about your mental well-being. So you might be suffering, but you just don't want to talk about it because there's this perception that has been created that as the Black man, you are strong, you're powerful, you're gonna look after your family, you're going to, bring home the money and, do everything that's required of you. But actually, if you're feeling within yourself the inability to carry that load, you don't feel confident and capable enough to be able to speak openly about it. And I think for me, speaking as part of Dope Black Dads as an example, we've created a platform now where Black men can come in and share in a safe space how they're feeling, kind of explore what it is that they're going through, what it is that they're suffering from, and look at ways in which we can help people to heal and to kind of get the help that they need to be able to continue to thrive. And I think there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I don't know all the answers. I don't have all the solutions to these problems. And actually, I am feeling bad, or I am feeling down, or I am struggling. And I need to talk about it, and I need to have a space to be able to share that. And I think maybe now we're starting to see a bit more of a shift, but perhaps, it's not happening that quickly, but I think we are starting to see a slow shift of, Black men being able to talk more openly about their mental health and their mental well-being.
I think when we talk about reluctance, I think there's a lot of societal influences that suggest it's not the done thing, as well as also culturally. So I'm glad that you touched on that, Umar, because people outside of West Indian culture, for example, might not identify with the fact that, certainly thinking to my family, my friends and associates within that West Indian culture, we don't talk about it. I was just about to start rocking some pat or whatever.
Yes, Naya.
So that's a problem. That is a problem. So that's just recognizing that there's something within our own culture, and other cultures have other things that they tackle differently or struggle to tackle. But I think the societal influences, the media, marketing, messaging, branding of a strong black man is anything but vulnerable, which is crazy. And if you actually go back the years, if we take ourselves back the hundreds of years or so, into transatlantic slavery, we were positioned as superhuman. We had superhuman strength. We had superhuman emotional detachment. And that has carried its way through all these generations, and still today, it's not well widely covered. Dope Black Dads is a great platform. I follow it on Instagram. I've been on the chat with the guys there, Marvin and such. That's a great thing, but there's not enough of that happening. There's not enough platforms like that, and not enough people outside of that platform are picking up on that and lifting it aloft and saying, look at the great stuff that's happening there.
And I think one of the things that I have, when I reflect, because, you have to do a lot of reflecting, right, when you're kind of talking about this and thinking about your lived experience versus what I'm seeing playing out. And I just, I think about there's so many moments that I've had in my career where I've struggled for lots of different reasons. So I had cancer a few years ago. And I remember working in a company, and I didn't tell anybody I had cancer. So I left one job, got another, then got diagnosed, didn't tell anybody, had a restructure, so left one business and started another, and just not coping at all. And I remember, and then before I said, this is not working, I'm going to go and take some time out, go and travel in Canada. I remember going to my mum's house. I talked to my mum about this a few weeks ago, and I went to my mum's house, and she was living in Blackpool at the time. And for a whole week, I did not leave her house. Do you know what I mean? My daughter was just turned 5 then. So, I was still kind of recovering from chemotherapy and I did not leave her house. Like, and not in the way, like sometimes when you don't want to leave your house, like it's like, fine, whatever. I mean, I literally would not step foot outside of the house. But if you'd have asked me at that time, like, Sharina, you all right? Do you need help? Do you know what I would have said to you? Yeah, I'm fine.
I'm
fine.
I mean, that's an example. The earliest example I would give of struggling with mental health was I lost my father in 2003, and 2 weeks later my son was born. Lyndon, my firstborn, he was born. And so, to your point, Umar, I had to be back in work. Just bought a house. I had a mortgage. I had to look after my son's mum, as well as we had got so much on, no time to grieve. And I remember kind of looking back now. I've seen a photo at that period where I literally looked like I'm so ill, so thin, and I wasn't eating. And it was just, I didn't quite recognize, even to the point where I then went, actually, I do need to get some help. I didn't recognize it. I was making scrambled eggs one day. It was about 3 months later after my father had passed. I just kept going. And I went to make scrambled eggs, and I cracked an egg, and I put the yolk in the carton and the shell in the pan. Okay. I did it 3 times in a row, and then just broke down and went, something, I can't function, I'm not right. But it was that there was something that I didn't even recognize then. I was much younger. 21 years old, but it was something about, this isn't right. I should be able to cope. I should just keep going. And that was a learning for me. And then other examples later in life, where you've struggled, and openly would admit, I do struggle from time to time. You kind of dip in and out of it. You have peaks and troughs sometimes, but it's now there are different coping mechanisms to help with that.
Yeah, and I think speaking on my own personal experiences, I mean, I was diagnosed with reactive depression. It's about 13 months ago I was diagnosed with that, and it's basically, it can be situational. So at that point in time, life was just very much, everything was on top of me, home, work. It was just, I was struggling struggling to cope. So I got that diagnosis back in June of last year. And then I think October, it just all kind of came to a head, completely suffered, burnout, left my job at that point in time. And, it was just crazy because I was just like really struggling, wasn't able to really kind of communicate that properly, with the people that I love. And it was just kind of in a really dark hole. And it's really, really difficult. And I remember kind of, fast forwarding and just kind of trying to find a new job and trying to do new things and stuff. And then lockdown obviously happened. And that was just like, oh gosh, okay, what do you do now? At that point, I wasn't really working properly. And it was just like, okay, what am I going to do now? And that was the point where I kind of, decided to get therapy, engage in that process and actually start to turn things around and kind of have that level of understanding. Because I think through therapy, I kind of understood that there was a lot of stuff that I was carrying from, like in terms of my relationship with my dad and, just kind of my relationship with so many different things in my life, and actually having that level of understanding and being able to let go of some of that stuff. And also kind of working on myself, because I think that's so important that you have that ability to do work on yourself. Because I think when you don't do that, you just fall into patterns, you fall into traps. And one of the key things that I did was, and I was saying before we went live, was I started running. So I downloaded the Couch to 5K app, started it. So it was like 3 times a week. So that was, in fact, that happened just before lockdown. So around February time. And since then, just been, 3 times a week minimum since February, just kept it consistent. And I found that that's helped massively with mentally, because, if there's stuff that I've got going on in my head that I just need to kind of try and understand, going on that run, running for 5K, 10K, even the other week I ran 15K without even realizing it. It's just
that's
kind of
you,
like,
that's you, Umar. That is you, because that ain't me. I know. That's you. That's you. Do you see how like I was nodding? I was like, yeah. And then when you said like the 15, I didn't notice. I was like, no, that's not me.
But yeah, it just kind of, it gives me that space. And I think, 3 or 4 times a week, I'm able, I get up first thing in the morning before the kids are up. So I'll wake up maybe at 4:30, 5, and I'm out of the door and I go for a run. And that's my time to kind of really focus myself, focus my attention, center myself, and know how I'm going to kind of work for the rest of the day. And I find that it's been really useful. And also having a brotherhood, and I know I've spoken a lot about Dope Black Dads, but I think having that space to be able to just say things and vent and kind of express how I'm feeling, whether it's in a voice note or whether it's in a text message, and then hearing like from other dads, actually, you know what, you're not alone, I'm feeling like this as well. And kind of having that support system that's in place, I think is so important. And again, I think it's important that we normalize talking about mental health. And actually there's no shame in saying that, you know what, I might have depression, I have a low mood sometimes, and that's okay. It's just about us having that ability to recognize that you do suffer from that, and there's no shame in that, but also you've got coping mechanisms and you've got ways in which you know how to handle it. And if it starts going to a particular place, then maybe people around you, because they're aware, because you've spoken about it, can help to pick you back up again. So yeah, I think it's important to have that open lines of communication across the board.
I think what you just said there around coping mechanisms, I think coping mechanisms are really important. And I've got a number of them. I like a bit of gardening. I'm growing some African marigolds from seed. I'm well chuffed with that. I like
yes,
a bit
to
of
the
cooking.
Gardening. That's me.
Yeah, I like cooking. I like a bit of music, and I like the gym. And what I did notice with the lockdown was, and I've got something to do now. I've got something else to try and figure out now, because what I noticed with the lockdown is that not having the freedom to utilize the gym as a coping mechanism has made me understand how reliant I am on that facility. And actually, when I think about time with my children, a bit of gardening, a bit of cooking, a bit of walk, a bit of outdoors, a bit of nature, all these different coping mechanisms are great, and nothing really beats time with my children. But just second to that is the gym, and that was actually, without that, I had this massive void. And I've got some thinking to do now, because if that happens again, or we get a local lockdown, or I get an injury or what have not, I don't want to be in the position I was a few months ago, where I was literally rocking back and forth. But unlike yourself, I didn't have the brotherhood to talk to. I'm sure there were avenues for me to maybe explore, but nothing naturally came to mind. And that, I think, is an issue for a lot of men in general, but a lot of black men as well. They don't have the brotherhood. And if you look at marketing around male mental health in the UK, let's be clear, it's the number one killer of men under the age of 50 in this country. That is a shocking statistic every time I hear it. But when you look at the marketing of it, whether it be through addiction, gambling, drinking, whether it be through marital separations, loss, bereavement, the majority of marketing that we see through TV channels, through media streams, is actually visually targeted at white middle-aged men.
Yes.
Where's the young black teenager who's trying to find his identity, doesn't want to go in with the wrong crowd to kind of find a place to belong, but doesn't want to be called out for being independent and being unique? Where's the middle-aged black man that is having a crisis of insecurity, or body insecurities, or so forth and so on, which, not going to the gym for 4 months, I don't know, a little bit of that, but the marketing, the target audience is not black men, and I think that's a problem.
And I think one of the things that I noticed in myself, right? So I to be honest, I'm quite unusual, because I'm not actually acting according to my personality type. So I can be quite introvert. I'm very, very private. It takes me a lot to trust people. So turning up on video every day and like, bleh, you know what I mean? Just like, just saying all the things that I've got to say. But not everything that I talk about is about, organizational and behavioral. So a lot of what I share, and this, James, because you've seen it from early on, is I talk about my personal journey with some of this. And one of the things that I recognized in myself, because of reacting to what happened in the States with George Floyd, is that for a long time, I had assumed some deficiency within myself for the reasons why, when I was navigating the world, when I was navigating working in a particular place, and I kept finding these doors being shut in my face. And even though I know some of that is about structural stuff, some of that is about prejudice, it is about discrimination, but because, other than talking to like one or two of my friends like Leanne and my mum or whoever else it is, I pretty much internalized that. So because I was always thinking, I have to be better, do you know what I mean? I have to turn the other cheek, I have to. And what I realized through this process is I never actually allowed that out. I internalized it so much that it was, I was talking about the pressure I put myself under is why I ended up with stage 4 cancer. Like, I genuinely believe it was, because when you have the stress, it will physically manifest itself in some way, shape or form. And, realizing that there were a lot of things that I probably didn't deal with. And because I spent so much time trying to show strength, so much time trying to live up to that label of the strong black woman who doesn't let, being a single parent early on with my eldest daughter, doesn't let, the foolishness of work, doesn't let, being treated unfairly in society. And I let all of these things go, right, I need to rise above it. But in trying to do that, I locked down the fact that, 110% of the time I wasn't all right. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, maybe there were moments when I had depression and didn't know it, I don't know. But I recognize now that I'm thinking, do you know what, Shireen, if you had your time again, that ain't it. Do you know what I mean? Like, soldiering on, not telling people you need help, not telling people that you had cancer, not doing. That's not it. It's not it.
I shared a post, I think the other week, where I talked about getting back into the gym. And I took a bit of a leap, really, and kind of told everybody on LinkedIn, I've also got a mental health journey as well. I've not been 100%, and although it looks like it, and I think, to your point there, Shireen, living up to that stereotype is I would argue that I probably spend more time worrying about what other people think of me,
James, oh my God,
because of my stature, because of my age, because of my profession because of the roles I have, and I think also is in work as you become a leader, and I don't mean that kind of narcissistically. I mean, if you become a people manager, if you take on program lead roles and things like that, it amplifies the pressure. So I spend more of my energy worrying about that and reacting to trying to mask that, rather than actually investing the energy into trying to be better and feel better. And I think I've spoken to one or two people, and that's been a common theme when talking to others, in particular to two black men recently, two black colleagues, male colleagues who have found the same, and then you just it just becomes too much.
Yeah, 100%. I can co-sign on that. I've been head of department in 3 different law firms, and there's a lot of pressures that are attached to that. It's not just about kind of seeing the clients and doing the work and all that. It's about the billing aspect, making sure that your department is profitable, because mental health is not a profitable area of law. So there's always that constant pressure of trying to make sure that you're doing enough to keep the department viable. But then you've also got the additional pressures, the personal pressures in terms of managing your people that are working under you. So, trying to make sure that they're okay. If there's any issues that they've got going on, trying to manage them and manage that. And it becomes a lot because, I found, and, again, through therapy, kind of exploring this a lot more, I recognized that what I was doing was I was dealing with stress myself, but I'd end up deflecting it and kind of burying it deeper and deeper and deeper, because I was too busy trying to, keep up a facade that, look at me, I'm great. Like, I'm head of department, I'm doing all this great stuff. And, look what we're doing. But actually inside, I was just like, I feel like rubbish. Like, I cannot deal with this. This is so stressful, but I'm always having to put on this suit of armor to kind of try and portray a certain thing. And actually, I think in a way, having that burnout was probably the best thing that have happened to me. Having lockdown has been the best thing that have happened to me. Because it's allowed me to kind of really reevaluate everything about my life. Because, I'm 35 now, I'm married, I've got 2 kids, and it's about, okay, what am I about? Who am I? What am I about? What am I trying to achieve in my life? What is my motivators? What drives me? And I think for a long time, my focus was on...
Let a sister know, Umar. You know what I mean?
You tell me how.
I feel like I'm getting there, but I think my drivers, if you'd asked me a year ago, I think my main drivers are kind of like, it was about status and money and kind of having a kind of a certain portrayal in society. Now it's very much like, first and foremost is about my own mental well-being and making sure that physically and mentally I'm okay. And second to that is then when I know I'm okay, then I'm able to do the best that I can for my family, because at the end of the day, I've got 2 beautiful children, and that's, who I'm trying to build together with my wife. We're trying to build a secure future for them. And actually that's my main focus and that's my main goal. So all of that other stuff is immaterial now. I'm not bothered about having labels or titles anymore. It's just about, okay, what can I do to utilize my skills and my strengths to make the best possible moves that will allow me to provide the best for my kids. So I think for me, that's where my focus is now and kind of where it's shifted. And I think, working in a profession like law, which is institutionally still racist. I don't care what anyone has to say about, yes, we can quote as many quotables as we like about, there's more BAME, which another term that I hate, but there's more people of color that are working in the profession.
I'll talk to you, Umar, about the term.
Let James talk to you, mate. He's got an alternative.
Yeah.
I think I saw your post on that, and I love it.
I don't like labels, full stop.
Yeah.
But I forgot him.
If we're going to be called anything, let's have a bit more positivity.
Yeah,
go on. You were talking about quotables.
Yeah, but and I just think it's hard enough as it is. And I remember I was asked by the Law Society Gazette, our industry newspaper, about 6 weeks ago to write a piece around Black Lives Matter, institutional racism and whatnot. I wrote the piece, posted it up on LinkedIn. It was published in the Law Society Gazette's website, and the amount of vitriol that I had on the website in terms of, oh, you know, have you thought about maybe that you're a failed solicitor, maybe that you're not good enough for the profession, or, you know, it's not a race thing, but actually, you know, you're just not good enough. And actually, it's like, for some people, they would have taken that really to heart. But actually, I know my strengths and I know my skills, and I know I'm a damn good lawyer. You know, there's no question about that. And you know, and I've shown that over the last 10 years of being in the profession. And actually, I think there's a lot of people that are very much, they're insecure. They're not ready to have those conversations about race. And actually, people don't want to acknowledge that, you know, there is a race issue that's going on, and not just in law, but in across many professions, you know, within our society, within our community, from the political structures all the way through to stuff that we do in everyday life. There is institutional racism that goes on. And until we address those issues, you know, we're going to continue to be in the cycles that we're in right now. But I do feel like the conversation is starting to shift a little bit, little by little. And I think people are now starting to understand and recognize that actually this is where we're at and this is what we need to do.
Shireen's dropped off, so I'm sure she's going to come back on in a moment. I mean, it's not a question, but it's a thought process, really, in terms of, I had a conversation recently about almost which comes first. You know, is it the conversation about, so when we're talking about black men's mental health specifically, which comes first? Is it the conversation about race? Is it the conversation about mental health? Because, you know, statistically, as a black male, I think the statistics are like 4 or 5 times more likely to suffer with poor mental well-being. If you look at the recent constant feed of Black Lives Matter stream and agenda, and the tragic death of George Floyd. I mean, I don't know about you, Umar, but, you know, I'm watching a black man repeatedly, or I'm watching it being vividly described again and again and again, and I can't help but think, you know, that's me. I'm connecting with that on a level that other people aren't, and not to disconnect in terms of, you know, black women, but in this current climate, I'm connecting with that on a direct level, one-to-one. So, is that the effect that had on me? You know, and my desire to kind of maybe try and create a space to talk about that, but. Is it mental health that comes first, or is it the race discussion that comes first? Do they come at the same time? Because that statistic of 3, 4, 5 times more likely to suffer with poor mental health as a black man, something's got to give, surely.
I think it's a conversation that has to happen at the same time. I think it's difficult to prioritize one over the other, because, you know, if you go with let's prioritize race over mental health, then how many more people need to go through things, and you know, how much trauma do we need to see before we actually address the issue? But then if we go through mental health first, it's like, okay, yes, we might be building up people's resilience, but if things are still happening in those institutions, in those professions, in the community and society, then it's, you know, we're building up people's tolerance levels to it, but actually nothing is shifting. So I do think that both things need to happen at the same time. And I think what it was interesting, you know, with the whole, obviously with George Floyd, and I think people's ability to kind of start to empathize a little bit, you know, and I say that more towards the white community, because I think people have started to be like, oh, okay, so this is actually a thing. Like, we know it's been going on, like in terms of black people being oppressed, but actually this is the thing. You know,
the way you said it, like, we know, yes.
But I think, you know what it is, though? I think I put that down, and I think why we're seeing more allyship going on and why we're seeing more people talking about it is because of the because of lockdown. Because I think people have got the time now. So I think what happened before, because Black Lives Matter has been going on for so many years, black people have been killed for so many years. Black men, you know, the statistics around stop and search in this country has been high for so many years. So nothing has really changed. You know, yes, George Floyd, obviously, you know, he was brutally murdered, and we saw that live stream. But, you know, when we take that in context of everything else that's going on, this stuff has been happening for years. But I think what's changed is that because people aren't, you know, having to rush out to get the train at 7 o'clock in the morning, and kind of their focus is on getting into the office, working and coming home and whatever, people have had more time, because there's a reason why, you know, where the book about not being able to talk about white people about race has went to #1, and more books around kind of the race issue. Afua Hirsch's book around British and that and the like.
Yes.
There's a reason why, because people are now saying, actually, you know, I've got time. Let me understand what's actually happening, and then people are understanding a lot more, and then wanting to have the conversation. And I think what we need to, I think people also. One thing that people need to understand, I think, you know, especially for a lot of white people that are going through this process of kind of understanding where we're at, you know, read, understand, speak to us. You know, we're happy to talk to you about our experiences. I've got no issues with that, but don't try and flip it back onto you. Like, you know, because I've had that situation happen a lot of times where it's like, you know, this is my experience, but somehow, you know, you're upset or you're feeling guilt, and it's like, okay, so it's no longer about me and my experience, and I'm having to try and console you and kind of what you're feeling about that. My whole intention is not to make you feel guilty about this. This is the reality of what I'm going through. This is my life right now. But what we're saying is, okay, let's find a way in which we can come together and have that commonality and that common goal. Because I truly don't believe, you know, white people are not racist. You know, I don't subscribe to that view. I know there's a lot of people that might take the view of, you know, they're all anti-white or whatever. That's not for me, because I don't believe that at all. I think what it is that we have a situation where a lot of white people maybe don't have a full understanding of the black experience.
It's the ignorance, and I say that, you know, with love and affection, because there's a lot of black people. I know initially when I was talking a lot about this, who actually said to me, well, okay, Shrin, you might have experienced racism. I've never experienced racism, and I'm not even sure it's as a big deal as, you know, is everybody else is making out. Now, that's all about the lens in which you view the world. And also, and I, you know, we had a very interesting conversation, because I was always as well, I said, but are you sure that's not the case? Or have you conditioned yourself to such an extent that, you know, if you started to look at really how you're treated, that would stop you in your tracks? Because what do? We just ignore what doesn't fit or what doesn't serve our purpose. We just, as you said, we just carry on motoring on, which is why, you know, with coronavirus, you know, and the lockdown, and just having time to stop and think, you know, and back to even the point that you were making earlier, Umar, about this whole, like, what are we here to do and to achieve? And I would, you know, and I would say, I would love as black people that we wouldn't have to spend all our time and energy trying to find ways to combat racism. Do you know what I mean? Or try and make environments more inclusive. We're all doing something in different. There's lots of people, you know, who are all doing things in this space. And I always think, like, God, imagine if we didn't have to fight for that. Imagine how we could use that same energy and creativity to other things. And I know there's always some other problem in the world, but, you know, I still am struggling a lot with, you know, a lot of white people in institutions, using you writing in the Law Gazette as a great example, who are still in this space of going, it's not about, I don't know what you're talking about. It's not about structural racism. Have you not just accepted that maybe you black people are just not good enough?
I love that. Have you lot?
Oh, listen, and that's quote unquote, James. Do you know what I'm saying? Quote unquote. And you know, when you're a bit like,
I think, well, a couple of, I'd come in there a bit on two separate angles. One is around that you know, I agree with you, Umar. The conversation has to happen at the same time. I was playing a bit devil's advocate. There's not one before the other for me. And what hit me during lockdown was I had an idea on a Thursday morning. I was in bed, didn't even get out of bed before I kind of went, oh yeah, we're going to do this. I was just like, with everything that's going on, BLM related, where do black people go to talk about how this is affecting them? And so I can set up a space to talk session and just openly invited anybody to come along and have a chat, a safe space, because a lot of organizations, a lot of people are talking about, you know, programs, initiatives, investments, so forth and so on, to generate this safe space. Well, I'm just there thinking, well, stop talking about it and just create a safe space and get people on the phone and have that conversation. But when you look at, let's look at that issue, pressing or having a deeper effect. So if you're black, racism, and having to worry about racism or the effects of racism and what that does to your mental health, where do you go? You can use any well-known search engine, if you like. There's a couple out there. I did this. I did a little test. I went on to a well-known search engine. And I typed in domestic abuse support, 3 words. And before I finished that search, prequel of options came up. About 12 search results came back, and then a subsection of additional avenues and channels. Of the 12 that came back, I think 8 of them were direct avenues of support. Okay, I changed the word domestic, and domestic is morally a huge problem, morally wrong, no greater, no lesser. But I just changed the word domestic to racial. Nothing came back. Nothing.
James, can I just add in one more thing? So there are therapists, there's psychotherapists, there are psychologists, there are people who are counsellors who have started putting notices on their websites to say they do not deal with Black issues.
Yeah. So nothing. Yeah, and I can believe that, and I by all means share a few examples with me, because I'll be like, what? But I can.
I know, and I'm not even, and and part of me is a bit like, because people go, oh my God, it's outrageous, but almost, is that not a sign of the times though? Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, it's almost like better that, I get it, better that do you know what I mean, when you're talking about, and they're like, I ain't got a clue. But the fact that that is seen as, again, like, it's so other and it's so alien, so mainstream, as a white person, no matter what bit that you need support with, you can pretty much find a therapist or a psychologist or a cognitive behavioral practitioner, and they will go. But if this is anything to do with racial trauma, generational racial trauma, or, and how that manifests itself, it's almost like people don't believe me. Like, what? I'm like, listen, don't even. I've always said, listen, don't get distracted by that before I lose my point. But, and it's the fact that we now have to get into, like, what does that, is there a training school that you go to where you can deal with racial trauma, and when you start processing it from that point of view, you then go, that's an example, again, systemically, how we are let down, because the trauma that we will experience from racism, from, all that way back for our generations and generations, isn't even dealt with in the mainstream, but it's not dealt with anywhere. Apart from people writing books. I'm not knocking the books. I'm just saying, like, so everyone else gets to talk to a real person. But if we've got, trauma, we've got to Google and hope, for us in the UK, what do we find? The majority of the stuff we find is for the States anyway. Again, not knocking the States, but it's just showing that we don't even have that avenue, or it's very limited, or it's not accessible here.
That's what I found. That's what came back. And I think when I stopped to think about that, I used my, I've got a daughter, Grace, who's 5, my son, Lyndon, he's 17. They're mixed race, my mixed race children, and I thought about Lyndon, and I thought, well, what happens if Lyndon gets racially abused on the way home from school, for example, but he doesn't want to talk to dad, he doesn't want to talk to mum, where does he go? So that bothered me quite a lot. But then I thought about this as well. What advice, even as his dad, do I give him? Because the playing field that we're currently operating in is so poorly balanced anyway. The systemic issues are so rife to date. And then my generation, my father's generation, my grandfather's generation, where do you go to get quality advice, guidance and support? And if there's nowhere to go, then that's where that kind of racial weight and pressure is having a deeper effect on Black men, Black people in general, but clearly Black men is in terms of what we're talking about today.
Of course, because you're starting the conversation, aren't you? And you're going, right, like, just like how when you go to the dentist, right? And the dentist is not saying I only deal with white teeth, like literally in a white person's mouth. No, do you know what I mean? It's not like, and therefore you've got melanin in your skin, therefore, like, your teeth must look slightly different. It's not from that. But, I believe so strongly in having support available, to lots of other people. And I'm sure there are probably examples of other groups that are not being well served. But if you have a common denominator that is your whiteness, by default, you will be better served, because our support system and our education system around all of that, if you think about doctors and psychiatry and all of that stuff, has been built around one lane, and that is to serve predominant society. So for us, you're literally having conversations with people and they're literally going, I'm going to have to stop you there. Like, I can listen, but I can't really help you with all the racial stuff, because, like, that's not what I've got my MPhil in. Do you know what I mean?
I can't empathise. I haven't got any lived experience to go from. I mean, I have a talking therapist. I see a therapist on a regular basis and talk and leave things there, and I feel better. That's something I do, which I want to promote, because I think black men, I think everybody should do that and should find something that works for them. But I have to be honest, I have not spoken to my white female therapist through my talking therapy about anything racially.
There you go.
And could I? Maybe I could. I don't know. But something in me says, no, that's
don't.
Yeah, she ain't gonna know about, and she can't.
But James, is that not though the almost like the epitome of why we are here where we are? Because if you take that example, think about us being in the world of work, think about us, all of those things, and it's almost like there's so much of our identity, and there's so much in terms of how we are feeling about the world and life, and because every time you're trying to tangle, to your point about which do you do first, you're trying to tangle what is because you need support because of it's just something's happened and it's just in your makeup, versus how much of our mental health challenges is because of a reaction to how we are treated and how we've internalized that. And that is very difficult for you to work out on your own. But then if you can't have the conversations with people that you see every day and they're telling you their life stories, I don't know about you, but I've sat and listened to some of my white colleagues telling me all sorts about who's having an affair with who, what's going on here, what's going on, you know what I mean? They're giving you like, they will not think, they are not thinking there's some things about my experience I'm not going to share with you because you're black. They're just telling everything. They're shouting out all the business. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Yeah. But for us, we are very much aware of the fact that there are some, because they just don't, it's a bit like, but I can't offer anything about that. Let's go back to talk about, who's having an affair with this, whoever it is and whatever. Let's go back to the safe subject. And that compounds that very issue. So it's not just what you see with your therapist, it's what you see when you have a boss. It's what you see. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think it's important that, we need to get into situations now where people are comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's a term I like to use, because I think in order to tackle a lot of these injustices and the structural racism that we see in a lot of institutions, we need to sit down and say, do you know what? Actually, this is the lived experience. This is what, as a black person, this is my experience. I'll give you an example. And I think, Shireen, you saw, and I spoke to you about this before, but a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to out them. I know, James, you went down the route of not saying which search engines, but I will happily say this institution. But
name them, Umar, name them.
I went to Asda in Tilbury.
Yes.
Google.
Did you get a reply?
Still haven't had a reply. So Asda I went shopping.
Okay.
Asda in Tilbury in Essex, just for anyone that wants to know.
Anthony Hemmerdinger, CEO. I tagged in the CEO because I know the CEO, and that is very disappointing. So I will follow that up, Umar, because like that now has offended me.
I appreciate that. But yeah, I think 3 weeks ago, I went shopping in Asda. It was late at night, so maybe about 8:30. So I go shopping, done all my shopping, receipts in the trolley. And I forgot, because my wife asked me to buy a couple of garden chairs as well. I completely forgot about it. And then I just remembered as I was leaving the store. Another lady, white woman, that was in front of me, she also forgot something. So we both went back in. Again, trolleys, receipts very visible. So I go back in, pick up the stuff. And then I just put the garden chairs on the self-service bit to pay. And then suddenly this woman very aggressively comes up to me saying, aren't you going to pay for the rest of the stuff? I'm like, you just saw me walk. You just saw me stick my card in and pay for all of this like 5 minutes ago. B, the receipts hanging out there, you can see it. And C, why have you not spoken to that white woman that's done exactly the same thing? She's like, oh, but it's, we do this. It's policy. We have to ask people that have gone back and sort. So that's absolute BS, because
why are you lying? Why are you lying?
I was just like, let's not even go there. So I was just like, I was unhappy. So she walks off, and then I spoke to her colleague, and I was just like, what's the name of that person? Because I'm going to make a complaint about her. And she was like, oh, she's just doing her job, blah, blah, blah. And then she walks off as well. So I decide, okay, fine. I'm not one to let these things go. So I tweeted, because, I can't be bothered to do emails sometimes. Tweeted Asda customer service. They were like, oh, really sorry that you've had this experience. We'll pass it on to we'll pass it on to the store manager, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, fine. Store manager next day calls me. I'm really sorry, Mr. Kankiya, what would you like us to do about it? And I said, well, the fact is, there is clearly a racism problem in your store because I've been racially profiled. So what are you going to do about it? What training?
Word.
Whatever.
Word.
I said, well, I'm really sorry. We know in this store we have had issues with that, and customers in the past have made complaints, and we've given them vouchers and stuff. I said, I don't want a voucher. I don't want you to pay for my shopping. I don't want to know that other Black people are experiencing that same racial profiling. So it's made me uncomfortable because now I'm like, I'm not going to go spend my money in Asda again until I know exactly, until I get an apology, and B, get some kind of update about what are you doing to address these issues. And he was just very much like, but I've been brought into the store to kind of come and help. And I don't really care about what you're doing. And we kind of went back and forth on this for about 15 minutes. And I said, well, to be honest, it sounds like you're just sticking to a company policy line about how you deal with complaints. You're not even listening to what I'm saying. You're clearly not able to empathize with my experience. So it's just a pointless conversation. So he said, he'll get back to me. That was 3 weeks ago. I've not heard anything. I emailed the CEO of Asda, and I've still not had anything.
I tagged the CEO of Asda because I know the CEO. I've worked with him in 2 businesses, so he knows exactly who I am. Exactly. And
so I just think I feel like this is some of the issues that we face as Black people, because people think that it's enough to just pacify us by saying, here's a £50 food voucher, and to me it's like, I can afford to buy the food. That's not the issue. The issue for me is that you clearly in your company have got a racial issue that's going on that needs to be addressed, and that's a problem. And I think this happens a lot across the board in a number of institutions where people think that it's just enough to just pay us off and not expect any more. But I'm just like, it's 2020. I've got 2 children. I'm not raising them to just accept their lot in life and just move on. That's not what it's about. We're here to challenge, and we want to see change, So I think more of that needs to kind of be happening. And I think, kind of going back to the point around the therapist, they need, people need to start understanding and empathizing and read up and recognize what it is, what it's about, and not just staying in their safe spaces. As a mental health solicitor, I've never suffered with bipolar. I've never suffered with paranoid schizophrenia. I've never suffered with schizoaffective disorder. But when I'm representing these clients, I know enough to be able to empathize with them and to be able to represent them to the best of my ability. So if I'm able to do that as a solicitor, why is it that therapists are choosing to not go down the same route and kind of wanting to avail themselves and learn about what those experiences are? And the reason for that is people are just too afraid to be uncomfortable. People don't want to have that whole thing of, okay, this is a subject I don't really want to delve into, and I don't really want to get too caught up in it because, what if they say this or that? Forget that. In order for us to progress as a society, we need to be able to have these conversations in the most open manner possible.
And I would take it. Can I just take it one step further with that example about the people? Is the other thing is, if we've got racial profiling and racial prejudice baked into us stepping into a supermarket, manifest that now when we're standing in the docks in front of a judge for, when you probably see this ham time, and the 2 + 2 = 10 dynamic, because you are Black, because you're a Black man, you have a hint of a mental health issue. What would get sympathy from a white person having that, and diminished responsibility. I'm not saying I know a lot about the law, but you know what I mean in broad terms. But if you're a Black person or a Black man, do you know what I mean? There is no diminished anything. It's like jumped up one. It's almost like, and it's fed onto this whole, the stereotype, and then somebody will say, oh, well, I had to follow him around the supermarket, and then he started acting great, because you hear all these stories all the time. It's proportionate. And that's the issue when I say to people, like, don't make this racism thing just about the words, because understand how, that viewpoint, and the fact that the other colleague says, but that woman's just doing her job. That is how normalized racial profiling Black people is, when a colleague who knows it's out of order can say, basically, that's what we've been taught to do. And that's why I'm like, That is what we've got to change. Do you know what I mean? And that's what we've got to change.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why. Sorry about that. That's why. But that's why it's lonely, right? You know, I'm sat here listening to what we're saying. I'm trying. You know, what are the unique struggles for a black man from a mental health perspective? Loneliness is one of them. I mean, you know, I personally, but I can speak on behalf of you know, colleagues, other epic colleagues. You know, you're the one black person in the room. You're the one black person on the call. You're the one black person in the football team. You're there's a loneliness. And then if you take that a step further and kind of look at the support mechanisms that are in place, you're giving examples now, Shireen, Umar, we're talking about therapists that are stepping away from that arena, don't want to extend that avenue of support. So there's a further level of loneliness. Marketing, media, mainstream.
It's isolating. It's isolating. It's isolating.
So you just end up with that, coming back to that point of internalizing, burying something deep down that eventually comes to the surface. And when it does come to the surface, where'd you go? And so it's almost like a vicious circle, because the healing process, unless you develop your own coping mechanisms, as you have, Umar, with running and reevaluating the aspects of what you're here to do and all that type of stuff, as I have with the gym and other bits and bobs, where do you go?
I just wanted to share that, hey, Abdul, because I think I'm trying to find, because you know when I get carried away, I lose track of the comments. Sorry, you know I'm really bad for this. So I'm trying like desperately, scroll through. But this is like relevant to what you're talking about here is the helplessness, and almost when you know that you're not even equal and we're at the bottom of the barrel in every sense, when you feel like you're not 100%, that has even more of a crushing sense on your self-image and who you are. So you will doubly fight hard to not admit that you're struggling, because we're at the bottom already. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit like we'll be digging in the earth next. Do you know what I mean? In terms of like how we're treated. So, and you do feel judged. And it goes back to, you know, what we were saying before about that preoccupation with how people view us. I know I was exactly the same. Probably why I couldn't care less now, but and it's work in progress. But because I spent a disproportionate of my time worrying about how I was perceived, not because I cared about that, but I was worried that I would not get the opportunities if I was not perceived in a favourable way. And because I was conscious of how hard those opportunities are, doubly, I had to keep trying to show up, even if inside I was a bit like, I don't even know why I'm doing it, whether I want to do it, whether I've got the capability of doing it anymore. I'm just tired, but I've got to keep on pushing. And there comes a point when you can't keep doing that anymore.
And that helplessness, and I'm just going to share this example. I won't out.
Everybody's business.
Yeah, I'm all good.
You should listen.
And you know, that racial profiling, that racial pressure, all of that kind of stigma that we have to live up to, and you know, that is just a pressure, feeling that you're bottom of the barrel. These language, you're going to use your language there, Shireen, again. You know, that's a pressure. The worst I've ever had in terms of support. So as a professional, seeking professional from my director or from my head of, the worst support I've ever had, and or basically didn't get any, was from a West Indian black woman, you know, the next generation older than me, because coming back to that point where we, in our culture, in our society, we don't, you know, what crack on, man up and reach, you know, all of that was terrible. So that helplessness it's not just about, you know, there aren't white people out there to help. You know, there's not people. It's not there. And what don't black dads?
But you know what? But you know what, James? Though, one of the things I want to say back though, how much of that do you think is generational and historical? Because when you know, and when I say this, I'm not making excuses, but from a protection point of view, because you'll think to yourself, society already treats us like we're second, third class citizen, and sometimes it's like the tough love thing, isn't it? And it's almost like, I don't want you to give them any excuse to treat you any less already. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because I think there's a factor in that. You know, it is that whole idea of tough love. It's like, you got to do this because you cannot afford, because the second you are on your knees, then society will have you cancelled, you know, literally.
Let me be clear. You know, generationally and culturally, I believe that to be a learned behaviour because of exactly that, Sharina. You know, exactly what you just said there. Don't give them an excuse. You've got to be, you know, you've got to work harder than the white man, or you've got to work harder than the person next to you to get where you've got to go. So you can't show that weakness. Absolutely, but it's still prevalent that support.
For real,
isn't there?
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's so important that, you know, as I say, we continue to have these discussions and kind of trying to, I suppose, I know people say you're trying to put the world to right, and actually, we are, because
we are.
It's tiring, you know, and I'm fed up of kind of waking up and feeling like I've got to have a certain way, or, you know, if I'm leaving my house, what level of prejudice am I going to have to face before I even get to the office? Fair enough, we're not in office times anymore, but, you know, it's just like, you know, what passive aggressiveness am I going to experience? Because I think in the UK, racism is very subtle. It's very, you know, you very rarely you're going to get somebody running up to you, calling you the N-word and beating you up on that basis.
Unless you're the BBC, Umar.
Unless you are the BBC, and everyone
twice.
Yes, and everyone knows my views on that. Having spoken on
what are your views? No, I do not know, genuinely. What are your views, Umar? Because, you know, there's some people who are saying this isn't a thing. I don't know why black people are getting so caught up hot under the collar over this.
No, I think it's completely abhorrent. You know, it's 2020. I don't know how this managed to pass editorial guidelines. And, you know,
twice.
And the reason that they were given was that they were saying, you know, the victim's family wanted it put in. But I'm just like, whilst I respect that, I didn't realize that people have carte blanche to give editorial judgments without going through policies. I certainly wouldn't have my clients telling me how to represent in court. So I'm not sure how the BBC allowed for that to happen. But I think it's important that we do continue to, I suppose, rise up, and, you know, we continue to shatter those perceptions. And I think I for one, I'm incredibly proud to be involved with Dope Black Dads, because I do feel like we are changing that narrative and giving black men the safe space to be able to speak openly about their issues, you know, around parenting, around just kind of the black male experience. And actually, you know, we're trying to create a new way of doing things and saying, we're not just going to accept that. You know, things happen, we will react to it. We're not just going to, you know, sit back and be like, oh, you know what, it's just another thing about being black. No, if something is wrong, we are going to challenge it, and we will use the mechanisms and the channels that are available to be able to get our views across. Because I think that is the only way that people are going to understand and recognize that actually, as black people, we're not accepting being at the bottom of the totem pole anymore. We're not accepting that this is our lot. You know, no, we have got every right to be here. We've got every right to occupy spaces in institutions and professions, and we should be respected in the same way as everybody else is.
Well, on that, I think that's a lovely place to finish, Umar, because I know you won't believe me. We've been at this for over an hour, and I'm awful with timekeeping when it comes to this. I'll be like, we're here for like 2 hours. So, James, what are your final words before I bid everybody good evening?
I mean, nothing that we don't know, which is it for me, it is okay to not be okay. You know, and whether you're white or black, but particularly for black men, for young black men, you know, I try to inspire my son to kind of, and I talk to him about feelings, and I talk to him about emotions. I openly express it's okay to be upset. You know, so as Dope Black Dad's changing that narrative a little bit along the same line with him, with colleagues, with people that either work with me, alongside me, or report into me. Openly promote, you know, talk to me, share your feelings, and try and lead in that space as much as I can, because it's just okay. I'll probably be honest and say I probably still mask more of what I have to deal with personally than I'd like to. But then, you know, that's a hard mindset to change, isn't it? Because we've just talked about the generational effects of stuff. So, but I would say it's okay to not be okay. And if I can help anybody, if I can point people towards Dope Black Dads, I definitely do that. Suggest they get involved in that space. And if you want to drop me a message, by all means do so, because I'm just an open ear. I'll talk to anybody and try and help anybody, because I can empathise. I do know what it's like to be.
Yeah, we've got the lived experience.
Isolated. Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to become a therapist, but
No, we don't. But that we got it down pat. And I just want to say, listen, thank you both so much. Honestly, like you have my eternal gratitude for saying yes. Like I was giving Umar the hard sell, and he was like, you had me like the first 60 seconds, but you can carry on talking if you want. I was like, yeah, it's got to do this, and I do, and I guess I want to have these conversations with whoever I want to have these conversations with, that I feel like we're going to get that real level of talk that I am not seeing in the corporate webinars about this. And I'm not, for anyone thinks like I'm anti-corporate, I'm not. I'm just saying they're not, that we're still glossing over. We're still in 2019 approach to this, as far as I'm concerned. Whereas 2020 is now, we have to tackle this issue about Black people and what is stopping us from being treated equally. Human rights issue, not a diversity and inclusion issue, but also recognise that this is structural racism. And all those examples that you two were giving is exactly what racism is. It's the system, not the behaviour. And I guess, and I always keep like, I'm drumming this into people's heads, it's like, see it as a system, because when you do that, you can start to see how you can dismantle it. If you still think about it as behaviours, and only behaviours, then we're getting into sending people on nice, feeling workshops, thinking that that's going to solve the issue, and it won't.
No.
So that's my plea that I keep saying to everybody: please look at this from a systematic point of view and break it down. I've been following Black Dope Dads for ages. Like, people keep going, have you reached out to Marvin and Umar? Have you? I was like, yeah, all right. Yes, yes, Lord, yes, I will. Have you done it yet? Yes, I have. So I'm pleased we can make this happen. And James, you know how I feel. So, thank you so much. Keep doing you, and people don't underestimate the power of just being authentic and being yourself and sharing your journey, because you just don't know how many people you help when you say to them, my shit is not all the way together either. And everyone's like, no, my shit ain't together either, and that is the power of that humility. And we need everybody, white, Black and brown, coming together on this. But as we know, unapologetically on a Black vibe, so I don't care. And that's what, I'm here to do.
Okay.
All good. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you so much for the invite.
Thank you. Bye, guys. Thank you so much. See you Friday, 2:00. Music. Not now, it's too hot.
Take care.
Do you know what I mean?